hand. How do children get to manage money these days? Well, I spoke to Claer Barrett, consumer editor at the Financial Times, and Bobby Seagull, a maths teacher and quiz host of Channel 4's The Answer Trap quiz. And I started by asking if there's a difference between children's appreciation of money if it's physical in their hand as opposed to a balance sheet on an app.
So whilst obviously there's an argument for having a concrete object in front of them, I think young people perhaps don't really understand the value of money, full stop. This afternoon, I was chatting to my year 11 students, and these are students doing GCSEs, and I asked them, how much do you think the average person earns? And then we had a quick discussion of what is average. Is it the mean average or is it the median? And I said the median, the middle person. And they seem to think 80 to 100,000. So clearly their views are being distorted by looking at Instagram followers, TikTok stars and footballers. So I think young people, even if they can see tangible money in front of them, they perhaps don't understand the value of money quite yet.
That's fascinating. But actually, when you're teaching numbers, maybe to a younger group than your year 10, isn't it helpful to start? I seem to remember at primary school, you start with physical numbers. You start with an abacus.
Yes. So actually in maths, there's something known as the Singapore method, where you teach mathematics through 3 methods. Firstly, it's called the concrete, then the pictorial, then the abstract. So the concrete is when you literally have something physically in your hand. So it could be the coins, the £1 coin, the £2 coin, the 10 pence piece. And then you move on to the pictorial, where actually rather than giving them the £1 coin, because as a teacher, you don't want to be handing out lots of £1 coins, you've got the pictorial representation, £1 on a piece of paper. Then eventually you move to the abstract, £1 as a symbol. We need to make sure young people have that concrete understanding first before they move on to the abstract level of thinking, which money sort of is.
Claire, do you think children have an understanding of money, and do you think it's helped by the physical cash as opposed to the abstract cash?
It definitely is helped by physical cash, but we can't rely on that in the future, because certainly in central London, there are very few places where you can now spend it. Now, my 2-year-old niece, who I look after most Fridays, she understands that when I'm tapping my plastic card on a retailer's terminal, I'm paying for something, but what she doesn't understand is how much things cost. So when you try and explain that, the money on the card can run out, you just can't keep tapping, to spend. It's quite hard for younger minds to understand. And when you consider that 60% now of all debit and credit card transactions in the UK are made using contactless, it's quite hard for children to get that exposure to money. Now, of course, if you're with older children, perhaps, you can make a point of saying to them, here is the bill, we can look at the numbers. Can you work out what it would be divided by 4? Not having that tangible instinct to, put a £1 coin, if you're lucky enough to get one of those, in your piggy bank. I mean, I think other than the tooth fairy, I fear we could be completely cashless.
but the piggy bank is gone, hasn't it? And you can get, and I understand a lot of people have these, pocket money accounts for children on apps where they see the money they've got, and they even get a plastic card that does allow them to spend, don't they, Claire?
Yes, children as young as 6 can get a contactless card. Now, that might shock a lot of people. What I find is the more shocking thing is that we don't yet have any of the main high street banks offering that. You have got to be 11. But I think, that child of 6 today, yes, the apps are great, but you've got to pay for them. There is a charge attached to most of these services, a couple of pounds a month, the parents have got to pay. Now, the functionality is brilliant. You can say, right, tidy your bedroom, you will earn £1. Then you can see that in your app coming on, or have your mum or dad show you on their phone. So it sets up the expectation that you might get paid for chores, but it does reinforce this message that, you're dealing with digital, it's not invisible anymore. And let's face it, a child of 6 today, is cash even going to be a thing for them when they're in their teens?
Bobby, don't you have older teenagers teaching you about money and telling you to invest in Bitcoin? They're way ahead of us on Bitcoin hit $65,000 today. They're all laughing, the kids who played that particular market.
Oh, yes, the students are all convinced. They're like, Mr. Seagull, I can make money in the stock market. But now they're not talking about the equities market. It's all about cryptocurrencies.
It is a funny thing, isn't it? Because there is a certain sophistication among a certain strand of young people when it comes to finance. I mean, maybe naivety, maybe sophistication.
I went to a school in Manchester last summer as part of the FT's Financial Literacy and Inclusion campaign, which is a charity we've set up. And we delivered a lesson to students about the risks of investment, gambling and scams online, because these are three really risky areas that they're all exposed to as young teenagers. And we had a room full of 14-year-olds who wanted to talk about nothing else but Bitcoin, messages they'd had on Instagram with the offer of laundering money for a fee. That's known as being a money mule. The majority of them had these approaches. And as for gambling, well, they all knew a lot about that. So they are exposed to these risks, even as young teenagers in everyday life. And we really need to be teaching them about these topics in schools, on the curriculum, as part of maths, part of as an exam in syllabus, so that it gets the teaching time that it deserves.
Claer Barrett there of the Financial Times with Bobby Seagull, maths teacher.